Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Silibaziso. I'm a fourth year nursing student, and on this channel I create content about everything to do with university life, nursing school, and international student experiences. And if this would be the type of content that you'd be interested in, definitely subscribe down below and turn on notifications. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing the different university accommodation options that you might have. The different determining factors for the type of accommodation that you're going to choose is dependent on your budget, how far you stay from the university, and also your personality. So there are about 5 different types of university accommodation options. The first one that everyone knows is living on campus. This is straightforward student accommodation that has been created by the university, and it is usually on campus, and it is only accommodated for South African students. The second option is private residencies. These can be on campus. For example, at UWC we have what is known as the COVID Student Village, or it can be off campus. For example, in the Western Cape we've got what is known as South Point. So these can be on or off campus, and they're not run by the university, so they have nothing to do with the university. They've got a separate application, and everything is dealt with that organization. The third option is your private accommodation, and this can form in 2 ways. The first one is shared accommodation, where it's a big house that can be divided into 5 bedrooms, 6, and these rooms can be either be shared or you're renting them out single, but it is a house that is full of students. The second option under private accommodation is that you can have your own house. So it's pretty much like you moving out and you've got your own apartment. You can have someone else in another room, but the difference is that you are by yourself, and it's got that more homey vibe than a shared accommodation. And the last option is obviously staying at home. So I'm going to be discussing the pros and cons of all these different types of accommodations. I'm going to group them into 2 ways. The first one is going to be your campus and your private residences. Those will be grouped together, and then your private accommodation and staying at home will be grouped together, and I'll be giving the pros and cons of those 2. So I'm going to be starting with on residence, campus, and private residences. So the first pro is independence. Yes, independence, you can have it in all forms of accommodation, but I feel like you've got a bit more independence if you're on campus, because you're far away from home, and essentially you're far away from any guardians that are going to be telling you what to do. You do not have your parents to bail you out. There's no one doing your laundry, there's no one cooking for you. You're doing everything for yourself. You're budgeting your own money, you're budgeting your own allowances, you are taking care of yourself. And for most people, it is the very first time that this is happening, and it's wonderful. It allows you to grow as a person. That whole independence, I feel like it's needed for maturity and growth as a person. The second thing is it allows you to save a lot of time. You do not have to waste a lot of time traveling. Everything that you need is on campus. If you need a library, if you need to print something, if you need to use your computer, if you need to use a gym, and sometimes even like little tuck shops on campus where you can do your groceries or go buy lunch, go buy food, and that sort of thing. So everything is mostly provided on campus, and should you need to go shopping at a mall, it's usually within like a walking distance or just like a taxi or a little drive away from campus. So being on campus allows you to save a lot of time, because everything that you need is around you. Should you need to go back home to fetch something during the day, you can do that, because your house is on campus, and you don't need to wake up as early for you to go to classes. You literally can wake up half an hour before class and still make it on time. So it just saves you a whole lot of traveling time regarding that. The third thing is it allows you to meet new people, because you're surrounded by lots and lots of students in that residence that you are in, and it allows you to find like-minded people. So it will allow you to find people that like to study, or people that like to party, people that are interested in the things that you do. Because of your interactions with them, we've got a large pool of people to interact with and to make friends with, other than someone who's staying at home. They only get to meet students when they're on campus, and now with online learning, it makes things very difficult. So it makes it so much easier for you to make friends if you're on campus, because you're meeting people in the library, you're meeting people in your residence. If you are studying after hours, if you're at the gym, you get to meet so many people that are outside of your class, that are outside of your course. It allows you to make great friendships, because you guys are spending a lot of time together. You get to create that deeper connection with the people that you're surrounded with. And the last advantage of staying on campus in private residences is that you've got 24 hours to university amenities and utilities. So if you need the library, if you need the communal rooms, if you need study rooms, if you need the gym, everything is surrounding you, and there's usually security watching over you if you need to study late and that sort of thing. So that's really great because you get access to that. And if you're someone who doesn't want to buy textbooks, if you've got access to the library, you can actually take out the books while the library, you use them, and then you put them back without having to take them home. And that allows you to save money. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that it is extremely expensive, and if you're going to go into a private residence, the prices might even double, especially for us international students. It might actually be more expensive than your extra tuition fees, which would be a problem for us since we need to pay our fees up front. So now if you're also now expected to pay fees up front for private accommodation, it becomes really expensive. Obviously, if you can afford it, it's great. How you decide whether it's worth it or not is you need to look at what you're getting from what you're paying for. So if you're paying 30,000 rand for accommodation, but you know that you're not going to be traveling with that, you know that you're going to have access to the gym, you're going to have access to the library, it cuts down on other costs. So if you can balance it out, it might work for you, but just note that it is extremely expensive. And if you're going to be choosing to have meals accommodated without, it just makes the money double even for them. Another thing is that you have way too many distractions because it's such a large group of students in a small area, and if you're sharing with someone, you guys might have different schedules, you might have different personalities. One might be loud, one might be soft, one might be a party animal, one might be a nerd, and that sort of thing. So dealing with different personalities can become very difficult. Some people might be more awake at night while you're trying to sleep, and vice versa. So those clash of personalities and the way that people function and their schedules and that sort of thing can cause a lot of distractions for yourself. And then also it can have a lot of negative influences, because if you've never been by yourself and then now you're being thrown deep end, there's so many different personalities and pressures that are coming your way, and it can be very difficult for you to differentiate between what's good and what's not. And you might see that okay, everyone is doing it, becomes a norm for you, so it becomes easier for you to attach to it. And they say birds of the same feathers flock together. So obviously if you're now accommodating yourself with people that are party animals that don't study, you're more likely to gravitate towards that. The opposite can be true, that you can gravitate towards people that are doing good things, but just be aware that there's a lot of peer pressure that's going to be around you because you're around such a large group of people. The fourth disadvantage is that you might become homesick because you don't have your family there as often, and you might not visit them as often, especially if you're in the healthcare field and you've got placement hours. If you're away from your family and you're staying on campus, you can spend like months and even weeks without seeing your family. So that might become difficult, especially if you're moving from another country, another province, and you can't visit as often. That becomes really difficult for you. So homesickness can become a big thing. Another disadvantage is that it's got very strict rules. They've got times when you must be asleep, they've got times when you can't make noise, you can't allow people to visit, you can't have friends sleep over. There's just so many rules that come with staying on campus, which might not be great for you because now sort of feels like your freedom is being taken away. So if you're wanting a bit more freedom and doing things at your own time, if you want to go out at 1 a.m, that you can do that, then being on campus or being a private residence might not be for you because you are bound by those rules, and if you break those rules they can kick you out. So you really don't want to be putting yourself in those situations. Another thing is you might not like the people that you stuck with. For example, if you're sharing a room with someone, you might not like your roommate, you might not like the things that they do, their behaviors, things that they eat, you might just not like them, and you guys don't gel well together, and that can create a really awkward and uncomfortable situation for you. Or even if you like the person that you're staying with, because I've had so many stories where people have found their best friends because of of that whole situation, but you might not like the rest of your flatmates, if I can call them that, because some might be loud, some might be soft, some might be smoking and drinking, you might not like that and that sort of thing. So just that whole thing of having a lot of different personalities might create a lot of friction among your flatmates. And another thing is that finding accommodation is very difficult. They're high in demand and there's not enough to cater for the amount of students. So the supply and demand is really bad, and as a result we have a lot of students that apply but do not get in, and it creates a lot of problems, especially for those that are coming from different provinces and different countries. So it's very difficult to find. Should you find it, be very grateful, because there's a lot of students that are struggling right now. And the last thing is, staying on campus, you're more likely to start eating badly if you're someone, one, who doesn't know how to cook. I mean, if you don't know how to cook by the time you're 18, we need to sort that out. But if you don't know how to cook, or you're just lazy to cook, you're cooking for one person, if you're someone who doesn't like meal planning, it can lead you to adopt some really unhealthy habits in takeaways, and also just other bad habits like not cleaning up after yourself, just leaving everything anywhere because you don't have your parents to tell you clean your room or pack away the plates and that sort of thing. So I feel like that lack of parental control can lead you to adopt a few bad habits. Obviously, if you've been taught well, wonderful, but not everyone has had that home training, and you adopt other bad habits that other students have, and you adopt those things. So those are the disadvantages of being on campus. But just to highlight, the biggest pro is the independence and saving time. One of the biggest cons is that it's expensive and there's way too many distractions. Now let us move to private accommodations. So remember, private accommodation, it forms in two ways. One is either you've got a big house and there's different rooms and there's a lot of students staying in that area, or you are renting out a flat and maybe it's just the two of you, or you by yourself, like in a granny flat or a bachelor pad. And the other option is either staying at home. So I'm going to be giving you the pros and cons of those two options. The first one is that it's a little cheaper renting outside of campus, and I mean at home. You're not paying any rent. If you are, it's probably going to be a minimum. Like your parents are not going to charge you that much for you to be staying at home. The only cost that you really would be the highest would be your transportation. So like if you're driving, then your petrol become an issue. If you're using public transport, then that might become an issue. But I would say it's a lot less expensive than staying on campus. Another pro is that it protects you from the negative influences that campus has, especially if you're staying at home. You still have that parental control. You still have someone looking out for you. The next thing is that you've got support from your family, especially if you're staying at home, because they're right there with you. And if you're staying by yourself, they can visit you regularly because it's your own place. Also, it allows you to have a lot of privacy. Obviously, if you don't have your own room, then that becomes difficult, but just having that whole privacy and having your own space in your own cave is really nice. It allows you to have better balance because you're not as distracted as you are on campus because of having a large amount of people. So being by yourself or being with a few people, it allows you to just focus on yourself and minimize those distractions and the pressures that come with having a lot of people around you. It allows you to have a lot of flexibility because you're not having stringent rules controlling you. Private accommodations usually have less rules than if you're staying on campus. Obviously, if you're staying with strict parents, that's rather unfortunate, but I'm hoping that at least by the time you're in university, your parents sort of relax the rules a bit. You're becoming an adult, you need to be exploring life. It's logistically easier than staying on campus. And what I mean by this is you don't have to constantly be packing and moving around. If you're staying on campus during holidays, usually they'll move people out. You can apply to stay on res for the holidays, but then you'll be moved to a different room. If you need to go visit your family, you are packing. So there's constantly movement that's happening on campus. Whereas if you're at home or a private accommodation, you're there for long periods of time and you're not moving anywhere, you're not going anywhere. So it just makes the whole logistics much easier for you. Another thing is, if you're staying at home or a private accommodation, the kitchen is more homey than communal, which makes it much smarter and cleaner in my own opinions anyway. And it's especially if you're staying at home, there's just that home kitchen vibe. There's the proper utilities, there's proper cutlery, there's extra plates, there's just, I don't know, the kitchen is proper. Like I've seen the communal rooms and how they look, and you having to carry pots from your room, that whole vibe is just not fun. So just having something that's a bit more stable at home or in a private accommodation is nice. So let's now move on to the disadvantages of staying at private residences and staying at home. The first one is that private accommodation is not always designed for students. For example, let's say you are renting a granny flat and you're going to be staying there by yourself. Usually they'll be catering it for young adults that have started working for the first time, so they might not necessarily have things like Wi-Fi installed. I mean, obviously most rental places now, they're moving with times, and most of them have Wi-Fi, but you might not find that. You might not find a study desk. It might not be furnished, so that means you now have extra expenses to be furnishing your house. It might increase your expenses. Another thing is, if you're staying at home, you will have responsibilities of taking care of younger siblings, you know, doing house chores. Like when you're staying by yourself, like there's so much freedom. If you don't wanna clean, you don't clean. If you wanna cook, you don't cook. But if you're staying at home, you gotta cook because everyone else has gotta eat. So those responsibilities can sort of get in the way of you being a student. Another thing is you've got a lot of traveling, especially if your home is far from campus, but just in general there's a lot more traveling because you're staying outside of campus, and you know the distance might be really long, it might be short, but either way there's that traveling, and it might lead you to having early mornings and late nights. Another thing is it might be difficult for you to make friends. If you're a social person, it's easier for you, and you know you might put yourself in university events or put yourself out there. But if you're not social, that lack of a large group of people around you can make it difficult for you to not have friends, because you're not forced making friends, because you're not surrounded by a lot of people. You're seeing people in your class, and you guys might just talk about things about, you know, class, what's happening with your course, and that's it. You know, there's nothing deeper that's going after that. But if you're staying with them, it's much easier for you to make friends. Another thing is the lack of university access. After hours, you know, you're at home, you can't exactly come in, and also you don't want to be traveling late at night with public transport. There comes that whole safety thing, and also it might lead to you missing out on university events or not being involved in university sports, gatherings, and that sort of thing. Like for example, myself, I really wanted to do dance. I wanted to join the choir, but because I stayed far, the traveling was just going to be a lot and was just going to double my expenses. So staying out of campus can sort of disrupt your social life. You can make it work here and there, but it's not as easy as someone who's staying on campus and you have that easy access with the people that are around you. So these are the different university accommodation options that you have. So you can look at the different pros and cons that I've given you, and you know, make a decision what is the best option for yourself. So comment down below and let me know your different expenses, your different experiences. I'll be very interested to hear about them, and you know, so that you can educate other students that are going to be starting university soon, so that they know what they're getting themselves into. Until next week Friday 12 p.m. South African time, have an awesome one. Bye guys.